The Rameir Simcha, Dor Sameach, was one of the Gedolei Torah of his time, lived in the late 1800s, the earlier part of the 20th century, and he lived in Vinsk. He was known as Rameir Simcha Vinsk. The Rogatchover Goyen, the famous Rogatchover, who knew everything, and he was a level of genius is not to be imagined. He also lived in Vinsk, and he lived literally almost opposite sides of the street. One side of the street was Rameir Simcha Vinsk, and the Rogatchover was on the other side. So somebody came to Rameir Simcha to ask a very complicated question on mikvos. So Rameir Simcha says, "Come back in half an hour. I'll give you an answer in half an hour." He goes and he figures while he's waiting for Rameir Simcha, he might as well go across the street and pose the question to Rogatchover Goyen. His name was Yosef Rosen. So he goes into the Rogatchover, and as he starts explaining the question, the Rogatchover already immediately gives him an answer. He doesn't tell him to wait. As Rameir Simcha says, "Come back in half an hour." Half an hour passes, goes back across the street to Rameir Simcha Vinsk, and Rameir Simcha answers him verbatim what the Rogatchover told him. So this person didn't have much seichel, as they say, and he says to the Rameir Simcha Vinsk, he says, "I don't understand. I come to you, pose the question, and because it's complicated, tell me to come back in half an hour." With the Rogatchover, before I even finished saying the question, he already gave me the answer. Why was he able to answer me immediately, and you told me to come back in half an hour? This is the question he asks Rameir Simcha Vinsk. So Rameir Simcha answers, he says, it's a known fact that the Rogatchover reviews Kol HaTorah Kula every 30 days. So the whole concept of forgetting is not possible, has no relevance there. Because every moment he's within every subject matter in Shas. Therefore, he answers immediately. Me takes a little bit longer. That's what Rameir Simcha said to this person. Why he told him to come back in half an hour, and the Rogatchover was able to answer it immediately. The concept of Kohanim's reason, as the Ramban explained, Mishnah has to be repeated for the ordinary Jew, even for the exceptional Jew. For the Kohen, does not have to repeat it. Kohanim's reason, they're wired in a way, Kohanim, that everything they do with immediacy. And they're on top. So the laws which pertain to them, they live those laws every moment of their existence. Therefore, it's not necessary to repeat it. Klal Yisrael, when they're not at that, they don't have that level of immersion as the Kohen. Therefore, forgetting has relevance to them. Therefore, it has to be repeated. I'm saying just the same answer which Rameir Simcha gave to this person to differentiate between him and the Rogatchover. That's exactly the difference between the Kohanim and the rest of Klal Yisrael. Why Mishnah has to be the laws which pertain to all Jews, but the laws which pertain only to the Kohanim, those laws do not have to be repeated.
Remember that.
It's a good question, especially the way we're explaining it. The question is, why do we have to wash? When we wash for bread, what do we wash? So one reason is given in the Gemara is because rabbinically, because of this innate value of Truma, Kedusha, rabbinically, they have to ritualize their hands before they eat Truma. You have to wash your hands. Now, it's only if they eat Truma. If you eat Chulin, one would normally not have to wash his hands. So why, when we ask, so you have two pieces of bread. One piece of bread is Chulin, one piece of bread is Truma. So originally they legislated, if you eat something which has that innate Kedusha of Truma, you have to wash your hands. The ordinary Jew, when he eats Chulin, he's eating the same type of bread. The only difference is in terms of whether it's Truma or Chulin. Visually, it's the same bread. Even though status-wise, it's different bread. So if the ordinary Jew eats bread which looks identically as the Truma, so the vast majority of Klaus don't wash for Chulin, the Kohen's not going to wash for Truma. So since it was important that the Kohen should wash for Truma, therefore they legislated to all Jews, when you eat bread, you should wash as the Kohen washes for Truma. So we all wash for chulin to make sure the Kohen washes for chulin, for truma. That's the halacha. So you're asking, but if Kohanim's rizim it shouldn't be necessary. They'll do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. That's your question. Okay, it's a good question. But let's make a differentiation. The truth is, I don't even remember the answer that I gave in the past, but this is the answer, definitely. Anything which pertains to the Kohanim and only the Kohanim, we don't have to repeat those laws. Because why? Because these laws pertain to the Kohen, they don't pertain to the Yisrael. The Avoda, Tumah, V'Taira has no relevance to the Yisrael. But here we're eating the same bread. For instance, let's say to do the Avoda. Anybody who's not a Kohen is not permitted to do the Avoda. So he has no relevance. He functions in that capacity with Tumah. Doesn't. In that capacity, only the Kohen has relevance to that. If that's this, we don't repeat that. There's no external influence that maybe one person yes, this person not. Therefore, it's not necessary to do anything in that area. But here, two Jews sit at the same table. The Kohen eats his truma bread, the Yisrael eats his chulin bread. Visually, its physical makeup, it's the exact same thing. So the Kohen has to wash for truma, and the Yisrael does not wash for the ordinary bread, even though visually it looks the same. Ultimately, because the majority of Jews do not wash when they eat that bread, which is the same bread as the Kohen bread, it's going to influence the Kohen, and he's going to actually, he may not stop washing even for the truma, because they're on par exactly. But other areas with the ordinary Jew has no relevance to those areas, which is only the Kohen, there's no external influence which will in any way cause them to see they're the same, but yet they're treated differently. Therefore, as a result of that, there's no reason to legislate any laws for us, because those laws which pertain to the Kohen have no relevance to us. That's what I would answer. Torah. He says, before he begins Mishnah Torah, the Ramban writes, to admonish them and to remind them of their previous sins. That's the beginning. Moshe gives Musa to Klal Yisrael. This is 36 days before he passes away. To what degree they defied Hashem in the Midbar. And despite the defiance, how Hashem dealt with them with Midas HaRachmim. The reason why he's pointing out to them, although they failed so severely and they should have been destroyed, that despite their failing, Hashem allowed his Midas HaRachmim, even though the Meraglim, that generation passed away, but factually initially says, I will destroy them. The story with Balpor, I will destroy them. There are many times, the Chet Egel I'm going to destroy, but he didn't destroy us. So despite our level of of lack of faith and the extreme level of Chet, we're not destroyed. This is to make us appreciate the level of Rachmah Hashem has for us. Also, to remind us, in the past, Hashem had Rachmim. But you realize, if you cross the line too many times in the future, you may be destroyed. So therefore, don't repeat the misbehavior of the past to ward off something which could be terrible in the future. Also to strengthen them, to teach us Hashem's Midas HaRachmim is always in effect. Just as in the past, Midas HaRachmim is in effect, Midas HaRachmim is always in effect for Klal Yisrael. Shlo Yoma Odom. Person shouldn't say, Lo Nucha L'Reshes Es Ha'oretz Ki Ein Odom Asher Lo Yechto. I mean, we're not perfect. As Koheles says, Shlomo says, in Tzaddik Bar Asher Lo Yechto, there's no perfect tzaddik. Umiyad Tia Midas Adin Mesucha Kenegdov V'Novad, and immediately Midas Adin will be activated and will be destroyed. Moshe Rabbeinu ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu Rachman Moli Rachmin. He wants to share to what degree Hashem has Rachmin. Now this is very important. Ki Aslicha v'Amechila Mimenu. Forgiving at levels, whether it's inadvertent, deliberate, Slicha Mechila from him. He's the one who forgives us. Suyua ve'ezel l'bnei Adam b'avodoso. You hear this? Knowing that Hashem has the ability to forgive, and He does forgive, it's a tremendous assistance, aid, that we should be able to serve Him. Why? Kin she'omar hakosuv, as David HaMelech says, we say Tilim, Ki imcha slicha l'man tivorei. David says, Ki imcha slicha, because you have the ability to be soleach, therefore l'man tivorei, therefore we fear you. Let's say a person, he's always treated, he's never given a second chance, and it's inevitable he's going to fail. You know, you might as well, if you're going to be destroyed anyway, you might as well take advantage of whatever little bit you could benefit from this world, you do it. But if you know that Hashem is soleach, it's worthwhile to have sleep, to fear, because ultimately you're going to come out on the top, because Hashem has midas harachmin. Ki imcha slicha lemati vorei. If a person will realize every move he makes, it's unforgivable, and he doesn't have a chance to succeed, why even try to start? So what gives us the understanding that we have potential and we have ability to succeed? Because despite our failings, Hashem gives us endless chances to forgive us. That's ki imcha slicha man tivorei. So here Moshe Rabbeinu was telling Klal Yisrael, understand the past, you failed endless times over. And despite the failing, Hashem forgave you. See, as a result of that, even though we had difficult times in the past, but despite that, we could have been destroyed, we were not destroyed. As a result of that, it gives us hope for the future, that even if we're going to fail, we always have whisperings in the ear of the Yetzer Hara that it's not going to work. You're going to be punished, you're going to this, whatever it is. Hashem, it's like, the carrot and the stick. Hashem always has the carrot there. There's the stick comes down. But even when it comes down on us, we have the tochacha. But knowing that there is a tochacha, we don't cross lines. But even when, God forbid, chas v'shalom tochacha is activated, we always come out whole ultimately. We always recover. I mean, it's unbelievable. If you read history, we had the Holocaust. Yamach Shemam, 6 million Jews were killed. All the Torah centers in Europe were destroyed. Every community was uprooted. Today, so many years later, the amount of Torah in the world, where the Jews are in the world, how we've recovered on every level, materially, spiritually, everything. It's like the scars of World War II are not even noticeable. You have to go seek out the locations where the Churban took place. What does that say? Despite the level of failing, and we deserved whatever was the Holocaust, but Hashem says you're always coming back. You're always going to recover. What does that say? What does that show? The ultimate level of midas harachmin. It's interesting. The Mir Yeshiva went to Shanghai during the war. They first went to Kobe, Japan, then they went to Shanghai, and they survived the war. After the war, those students of the Mir Yeshiva, many of them went to Eretz Yisrael, many came to the United States, some went to Europe. The basis for all the Torah centers in the world were those Talmidim. Those students, the Mir Yeshiva, many of them learned by the Brisker Rav, they learned by Rav Shimon Shkop, they were mentored by all the leading Torah sages pre-World War II, which were not alive after the war. But their students were the ones that carried on. And they founded all the yeshivas, whether it was in Israel, the Panovich Rav, the Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim, Hebron in Yerushalayim, which was a carryover from Slobodka in the United States. Every yeshiva. The reason why they advanced after the war is because these people, they came into those yeshivas and they disseminated Torah. Early Detroit Rabbi Bast. Zechariah Nevrocha. He was a student of the Mir Yeshiva. He was one of they called him, he was one of the lions of the Mir. He was the Arroyos. He was one of the best students. So the best students came to various locations. That's Midas HaRachmin. And because of that, over time, we don't have a collection of what this world looked like right after the war. They were like, here and there was nothing. But these people reignited and rejuvenated, rebuilt Torah, and that's what Torah is today because of that. Ramchal writes, the Gemara says in Chelek that before Tchias HaMesim, even the tzaddikim who do not decompose in the earth before they're resurrected, including Moshe Rabbeinu, turns to dust and immediately he's resurrected. Why? Why does he have to turn to dust before he's resurrected? So he explains that after the Chet of Adam Rishon, that he ingested the fruit of the Eitz Hadas, which is Ra, it says Tov Ra. So that means that as part of the makeup of the human being, there is this element of evil, and evil cannot have a relation with Hashem. That if the person passes away, the neshama leaves the body, it goes to Olam and Neshamos. It's on a holding pattern. It's not the ultimate Olam Haba when a person dies. The ultimate Olam Haba, the world to come, is when Hashem will recreate existence, with the body the soul we reinfused in the body, but that body will be pure. It will have no trace of the Ra of the Tzadas. As a result of that, at the time of resurrection, everything has to go back to dust, and what's resurrected is only the pure matter. So since it's the pure matter, that's why the neshama that could be reinfused in that body, because now that person, body and soul, can have a relation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if the body itself has Ra in it, you can't cleave with your body to Hashem, because the Ra, God, Hashem has nothing to do with Ra. Therefore, the person has to decompose, and then he's resurrected immediately. And therefore, what I said was in the second bracha of Shemon Esrei, we say, Melech meimis u'mechayer u'matzviach Yeshua. Right? Melech Hashem is meimis u'mechayer. Why is he meimis? Why does a person die? Hashem said to Adam Rishon, when you eat of that fruit, you will die. You'll be subject to death. Because the moment you ingest that fruit, you're integrating into your being that Ra of that fruit. That's not part of eternity. Because eternity is you have a relationship with Hashem. Therefore, you must die. What's the dying process? The dying process is ultimately this decomposition. And when the resurrection comes, what's resurrected? I'm just telling you the Ramchal's words. Only the pure matter is resurrected. Without the Ra remains in the ground. Therefore, when the neshama is reinfused in the body, it's a pure body. And now body and soul, you're able to have that relation with Hashem for all eternity. So it's melech meimis. You say, death is terrible. Death is a brocha. Because of that brocha, because of that death, ultimately, you have relevance to eternity. Left Egypt before the time. And because they believed they could leave, they were killed by the Plishtim. And their remains were strewn all over the side of the road. That's one of the reasons. Why did God not take us along the Philistine highway? Because the remains of Shevet Ephraim, 30,000 of them, were just strewn all over the roads. If we would see this, it would be totally disheartening, be discouraging. They're going to want to go back. They'll say, this is what's in store for us. So Hashem didn't take us that route. We shouldn't see the remains of Shevet Ephraim. But ultimately, Yechezkel HaNavi resurrected them. Why did Hashem have them resurrected? That it should give us the understanding that resurrection has relevance. We should be aware that, because it's so far-fetched, person dies and all of a sudden he becomes alive again. How's it possible? So this was like a public event for Klal Yisrael. We should understand that what happened then is going to happen. It's Gemara Sanhedrin. Even though the Gemara says the Amoroim were able to resurrect. I mean, Rabbi Yochanan, Rav Kalatsky passed away, and Rabbi Yochanan was able to resurrect him. And the Gemara says over there, but that one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Yehuda Nossi was able to resurrected the goy for Antoninus. But it wasn't a public event. The story about someone say Yevashos, the dry bones that they were resurrected, that was a public event. Okay, so Melech may miss. So what we see something as negative, no, ultimately for a Jew, it's positive. Death is part of the atonement process, part of the purification process. But ultimately, we all come back. So knowing that, we say, no, something, it's not the end of the world. You know, Ani Mami B'Emunah Shlema V'Yas HaMashiach. Then we said, Ani Mami B'Emunah Shlema, that when Hashem will choose, there'll be Tchias HaMesim. Tchias HaMesim is part of reward and punishment. To be able to be rewarded, you have to believe in Tchias HaMesim, because the ultimate reward is because the body is a participant in every decision we make. Every challenge in Bechira, it's body and soul. So ultimately, the body has to be rewarded no less than the neshama. So therefore, ultimately, the body has to come back to receive its due reward, as the neshama receives its reward in Olam Haba. Ela Dvar Meshediver Moshe El Kol Yisrael Be'Ever Hayarden. Ela Hadvarim. This was the 36 days before Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. He's giving Musar to Klal Yisrael, as the Ramban explained, what the value of that was, and reviewing many of the mitzvahs. There's Mishnah Torah. But first he gives them Musar, for the various reasons the Ramban explained. Not to repeat it again, to explain, to show the Midas HaRachmim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that despite our level of failing, his Rachmim allows us to continue. And there's always hope. As the Ramban says. Because there's Slicha, therefore we have Yerushalayim. Bamidbar, Barova, Mulsuf, Ben Paran, Ben Tov, Lovad, Chatzir Nizov. So Rashi over there explains that Rabbi Yochanan says these are not some of them are not locations, but it's only alluding to instances over the 40 years we were chote, we sinned. And he's doing it in a way when you give musar, when you admonish, you reprimand a person. Sometimes if the reprimand, if the musar is too direct, person doesn't have the capacity to deal with it. So he alludes to it, and when he alludes to it, we understand what he's talking about. And we take notice and understand that we should not do it. It's Mishum Chlodin Shel Yisrael. It's covered of Klal Yisrael that, you know, if you respect another person, if you could say something in a way and accomplish the same thing gently, you don't give him that mussar directly. And that's called consideration. The Gemara tells us that today we're not able to give mussar. Why? Because to have the sensitivities, to be able to tell the person directly how to make changes is not simple. Of course, there's still mitzvah saseh, hochech tuchich sanisecho. We have to inform our fellow when he's doing the wrong thing, you have to tell him. But to tell him ultimately, the way at one time people would give mussar, we're not able to do it today. We're not able to give mussar as it should be given. Again, because we don't have what's called the tact and the sensitivities to do it. So even Moshe Rabbeinu, when he's given the ultimate level of mussar, all the failings over the 40-year period, he's doing it in a way where it seems to be he's just referring to places, to locations. But there are no such locations. Story of Miriam, but I just want to speak the last one, the Dizov. What's Dizov? So Rashi over here. Hochichan al Egel. He gave us mussar for the Egel. Also, why did we make the Egel? Bishur Rov Zov Shoyelim. because they had such an abundance of gold, they had such wealth. Shenema v'chesed v'beisi lo v'zov osu b'gabal. I gave them kesef, I gave them so much silver, so much wealth. And what did they do? Also the Baal, they used it for the Baal. Baal was a deity, to worship by idolatry. So the reason why we got involved in the Egel is because Hashem gave us such wealth, so much gold. The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, very interesting. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin that it's achbar is lo achbar ganvo el chura ganvo. When a mouse steals the cheese, if it wouldn't have a hole to escape to, it's not stealing cheese. It's only stealing the cheese because it's able to escape with the cheese. So it's not achbar ganvo. The achbar is the rodent. The mouse is not the thief. The hole is the thief because it has a hole to escape to. That's why it steals the cheese. If Hashem wouldn't have given us gold, we would have made an eagle. Wouldn't have got involved. But we had so much, and what wealth does to a person, and it's that level of wealth that Gemara tells us that when we left Mitzrayim, no Jew took less than 10 pack animals laden with gold and silver. That was the wealth. It was the least amount. You know what kind of wealth this is? This is besides the Bisa Sayyam, what was thrown out when the Mitzrayim were thrown out with the chariots. It was bedecked with diamonds and gold and silver. You become totally intoxicated. You believe there's nothing you can do that you can't do. As a result of that, when it was suggested the Chet Egel, we were vulnerable to the influences of the Erev for that reason. Now it's interesting. Here is giving Musa to Klaus of these of, but yet the Gemara tells us in Brachos that it was a defense. Hashem by the Egel says, I want to destroy them. So Moshe Rabbeinu, the Gemara says, if Moshe wouldn't have said it's something you're not even permitted to say, Moshe says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's a way you're at fault. You're at fault. Because you gave him you gave him so much wealth, they became intoxicated. If you would have withheld this wealth from them, it wouldn't have happened. So they're not fully culpable for the Egel because you're a participant in that. This is what activated the Midas HaRachmim. So when he speaks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Dizov is a defense. When he speaks to us, it's what? It's a criticism. It's to give us an understanding how we failed. Here he gives us so much. That's what we do with it. This is the thank you. This is the Hakor Satov. So the same words have a double, are like that. There are two sides to it. In one sense, it's the ultimate defense. Hanichuli. Hashem says to Moshe, allow me to destroy them. So that was the opening for Moshe Rabbeinu to begin supplicating Hashem. And that's what he said, Dizov. When he speaks to Klal Yisrael, he says, Dizov, how do you behave this way? After he gives you so much, that's the way you behave.
Rabbi, you're saying he's using the